Hey, everybody, what's up? Welcome into the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. Michael Beller, Jake Seeley, and Brandon Funston here with you. It is Monday, August 30th. I'm adjusting my mic because I'm pumped, guys. This is the last week of draft season, a week from now. So a week from now, we'll still be doing like sort of a draft season wrap-up maybe. But then when we get together for our Thursday show next week, that's a ranking show. We're going to be talking about week one rankings and things like that. So this is our last full week of draft season talk, preseason talk. It's a great time of year. And Brandon, I actually want to go to you to start off because are you doing okay, man? Are you feeling all right after the weekend? Are all of your best ball teams dead with J.K. Dobbins being out for the season?
Yeah, I was just looking. I actually did a quick accounting. I only had one actually that I'm playing out that's non-best ball, and that's happens to be the flex league, where I got kind of got some crap for taking four. If you remember, I took 4 running backs and 2 quarterbacks in the first 6 rounds and eschewed the wide receiver position until round 7. I'm feeling a little better about that strategy right now because I am able to take that hit. But, yeah, pouring one out for JK, that was a bummer. I was holding out hope that it wasn't going to be a season ender, but he got the ACL. And, yeah, so I guess we got something to talk about off the top here.
Exactly, we do. It's something we all hate to see, and least of all because of our own investment in J.K. Dobbins. You hate to see any player go down before his season even begins, even more so for a bright young budding star like J.K. Dobbins. So hopefully we're talking about a fully healthy and ready to go J.K. Dobbins in 2022, but that is exactly where we are going to start this episode of the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast as we look back at the third and final week of the preseason. J.K. Dobbins done for the year. So Jake, let's throw it to you now. Where you ranking Gus Edwards as you approach your final drafts of the season?
Well, first, I don't want to hear anything from Brandon because I'm in a home dynasty league with Cam Akers and J.K. Dobbins, so you can get to walking on that one.
So planning for 2022 already, huh?
Yeah, it really comes down to it, which I also got, by the way, like, tough luck. I have Leonard Fournette available if you want him. Like, yeah, screw you. Like, thanks for doing me some favors in your dynasty league, buddy. You don't expect anything coming anytime soon. Gus Edwards is just fringe top 20 for me. Because this is basically what I was saying in general, is Gus Edwards is essentially Derrick Henry. You're just not going to get anything in the passing game. That's what it comes down to. You're going to get some great rushing numbers, but also, unlike Derrick Henry, you have a quarterback that's going to be running for nearly 1,000 yards. So it's not that Gus Edwards is going to be running for 1,800, 2,000 yards. So he's not Derrick Henry. He's the version of Derrick Henry that Baltimore would employ, and that means 45% of the backfield rushing share because Lamar Jackson's close to 30% in his own right. So it's still a nice boost because Gus Edwards was down around 40, so he kind of almost doubles up in a leapfrog there. But Dobbins I had at 14, but he doesn't make Dobbins because Dobbins was involved in the passing game, and it comes down to, I tweeted about it when this happened, is Tyson Williams, who, if you've been watching this team and paying attention to Jeff on our site and everything like that, they've been talking that he's surpassing Justice Hill, who was playing a lot of the special teams. So, and also has more 3-down ability than Justice Hill does. So he would be the next one up that I'd stash. But Gus Edwards is very clearly 20, and he could finish as high as 14 or 15 like Dobbins did, but it's going to have to be all on the ground. He might finish the year with 12 receptions.
Yeah, I think he's a good bet for about a touchdown per game. But, yeah, even, his rookie season.
I had him projected for 12. Like when I updated this 12, and that's a lot to project for a running back.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, J.K. Dobbins averaged a touchdown per game down the stretch last year. In 2019, Mark Ingram averaged a touchdown per game. He could get that, but you're right. Like, when he had his run as a starter for like about 6 weeks or whatever it was as a rookie, he caught one pass in those like 6 games that he was getting like a regular 15 to 20 carries. So, yeah, I am at RB 20 right now as well. And, the Ravens, they don't throw the running back anyways. They had talked about doing it, but, they were second to last in running back receptions last year. And now I think they'll just, they will forget about throwing to the running back at this point.
Yeah, Brandon, give us an idea of who else is there. Who is he behind? And maybe something behind someone that people would maybe think, oh, that's a little surprising. And who do you now have him ahead of that also same thing that maybe people would be interested in hearing that Gus Edwards is now ahead of player X for you?
So I have him just behind Mike Davis. Kind of, the receiving upside for Davis wins that one out for me. So he's just ahead of DeAndre Swift, who is questionable for week 1.
Yep.
Kareem Hunt, Damien Harris, Myles Gaskin, Darrell Henderson, Miles Sanders. Those are the guys that he's just ahead of.
Jake, same question to you. Who are you sandwiching him with now?
The only one that I have in front of him that you just mentioned is Darrell Henderson. And if you want to flip-flop and say Edwards is safer, should be higher, that's also – I might have even under-ticked. I mean, I was super, super conservative in the passing game. Maybe if I tick that up, it's very close, so he could leapfrog him. Right in front, I'll tell you, right in front of him is Henderson, Jacobs, Montgomery, Edwards, Alaire, and Mike Davis. So I could see him if I play around and maybe give him, 6% or something like that, which would be an enormous number for Edwards or the target share, but maybe that pushes him up past David Montgomery. But again, I don't think he gets quite to the Antonio Gibson, Chris Carson, like 13, 14. I just don't think he gets that high.
Yeah, we're pretty much all on the same page here. I've got Gus Edwards sitting at RB21. For me, he's just behind Raheem Mostert. I know I'm very, very high on Raheem Mostert, Josh Jacobs, Mike Davis. That's who I've got right in front of him. Behind him, DeAndre Swift, Kareem Hunt, Myles Gaskin, Damien Harris. So sandwiching him in right in that same group. We're all pretty much on the same page. Jake, where do you think he ends up going just in the overall picture? Are we talking about Gus Edwards now as a third-round pick, a fourth-round pick? Where do you think he ends up falling as now we're really getting down to the wire here?
Yes. No, I think third, fourth round is exactly where, talking to Chris Meany this morning, and he said he went in the fourth round. But if you're talking about who's in the third round, you're talking about James Robinson, Darrell Henderson. You're talking about RB 15, 16, 17, 18. Somebody's going to take him there. Somebody's going to be like, 5 yards per carry. Well, this, and that. And there's the argument there. Again, if he is Derrick Henry and he's even just one tick and not 2 ticks behind Derrick Henry, again, he could finish as an RB1 in this offense. There's no question about it. The problem is it's going to have to be as efficient as it's been, as Brandon alluded to, is if he's averaging even 4.8 yards per carry and close to a touchdown per game, that'll put him there. But it's going to have to be a very aggressive and efficient. Not saying he can't do that, but that's a lot to bake into that pick, and that's why. So, yeah, I could definitely see it. He's going to be going in the third round.
Yeah. Brandon, let me
go ahead.
Yeah, let me ask you something a little bit different. You can answer that question too, but I also want to get into the idea of, if you still do have drafts ahead of you, and I know all of us do, and I think a lot of people do, is this changing at all the way you think about the running back position? All of us are, pretty strongly on being aggressive at running back early on in drafts, but now we have no J.K. Dobbins, someone that was pretty comfortably a top 15 guy. No Cam Akers, obviously, and he was someone who's being selected at the end of first rounds, beginning of second rounds. No Travis Etienne, wasn't quite in their stratosphere, but still someone who a lot of us like to circle around to as that high upside sort of, I don't know, 4th, 5th round selection at the running back position. All 3 of those guys are off the table now. Do you get more aggressive? Does that want to make you more aggressive at this position, Brandon?
Well, I think, you're just taking out you're taking out the supply, which just increases the demand, right? For the guys that we still look at as being volume safe and in good positions to, to me, the J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards thing is just almost consolidating and making, if Gus Edwards had gone down, we would be moving J.K. Dobbins up into
That's
the
true.
top,
It's a good point.
into the top 12. So it creates a more singularity with that team and kind of takes away some of the, I like J.K. Dobbins, but, but I just think, the running back injuries are nothing new. We all went into this with eyes wide open, and running backs have been going off the board like crazy. I know in drafts that I've been doing, I'm sure with you as well. And I don't know that this changes a whole lot other than make you want to get the guys that are actually healthy and get a lot of volume even more. So.
Sorry, I was laughing. I was like, with eyes wide open.
There you go. Bringing the singing into it. I love it, Jake. There we go. Beautiful. Are you how wide open are your eyes at this running back position now?
Which one? Are we still? I mean,
just in the fact that we now have at least 2 guys. You can even leave Etienne out of the discussion, and 2 guys who were top 15 running backs a month ago now not even playing this season.
Okay, well, because Brandon pivoted back to the Ravens, so I didn't know if you wanted me to go back to the Ravens or go back to what you're talking about for the general. That's why.
Yeah, like overall RB strategy.
Yeah,
Well,
it's the same. It's always been for me. This is the same answer I've continued to give him for years, and it's never going to change unless the NFL, unless the NFL changes how they play. It's never. I want to come out of the first 3 rounds with 2 running backs. I want to. Does that always happen? No, absolutely not. I have drafts this year where I have 2 wide receivers in the first 3 rounds. I have one where Kelsey fell into the second round, which is just absurd at this point. I don't love him in the first, but I'll always take him in the second. So it doesn't happen every time. But I do for the most part because of what happens in this situation. You can make the argument you shouldn't be drafting, which is just a dumb argument because you miss value. You could argue it both ways, and people get hurt in week 1. But this is what it comes down to is remember what you were doing just last year. And I don't say you as you guys. I say everybody listening is chasing Ahmed and chasing the next guy up and the Samaje P. Ryans and all that type of stuff is because you're trying to find running backs. I just did my home league auction over this past weekend, and the Melvin Gordon, Jamal Williams, and all those secondary running backs were going for low teens in an auction because you're grasping for options. You're just grasping for running backs. So I'll always aim to do that. Does it happen 100% of the time? No, but I still think that is the best strategy, and that's what I've always gone with and won a lot of championships doing so.
All right, let's look at the other big piece of news that came out of the week. And, the player involved isn't going to be fantasy relevant, at least off the bat. But Gardner Minshew going to the Eagles in a trade. Does it give you any pause whatsoever, Brandon? And off the top of my head, I can't remember if you are, pro Hurts, anti Hurts, neutral on Jalen Hurts. But does the fact that they went out and made this trade make you hesitate with respect to where he was for you, that maybe this isn't as locked in a situation as it seems?
I'm pro fantasy Hurts, anti reality Hurts. Don't think he's a good passer at all. Understand the value of his rushing yards, making him an arguably QB1. I think that Philadelphia somehow is tricking themselves into thinking that they could be potentially contend in the NFC East, and they might want a contingency that's better than Joe Flacco if Jalen Hurts goes off the rails. So I don't read too much into this. Jalen Hurts still has, I think, a pretty decent leash, but it is a contingency, and I think they're kind of preparing for what if the worst case scenario happens and Jalen Hurts is just abysmal.
Well, I think it's that, and the worst case scenario is that we don't want to go to Joe Flacco after what we saw for Joe Flacco in the preseason. On top of it, is that's really what it comes down to. This is more of a threat to Flacco than anything, and I think the rails would have. I mean, we're talking blown up at the bottom of a ravine type of rails for them to go away from Hurts, because they're going to find out. I'll go back to comparing it to like Josh Allen for the Bills rookie season. It's not Hurts rookie season, but it is essentially his rookie season in the fact of an offense built for him, and find out what he has. Is the Bills had no reason not to play Josh Allen the entire season. Find out what you can. Is Hurts the answer? Is Hurts potentially, even in a broken offense, the answer? You will find out this year. So if it's complete destruction in week 10, and they're like, all right, Gardner Minshew time, this is just not going to work, we're probably drafting a quarterback next year. Sure, but I think it's not the longest leash in the world, but I would say it's a leash that's going to have to be like burned at both ends before you see Hurts even yanked.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a fair way to look at this. Just with Hurts, though, being in that like back end QB1 discussion, and not even really in it, he's pretty much locked into being drafted in that range. I think it's at least worth thinking about as we go into this final week of draft season. One more newsy thing I want to talk about before we get into some of the preseason action that we saw is that T.Y. Hilton is going to be missing what sounds like potentially significant time for the Colts. Colts are just sort of referring to this injury vaguely as a disc issue. And we already have Frank Reich saying we don't think it's a season ender, which if they're already talking about that, have to believe it's going to be something that causes him to miss serious time. So what are you doing in Indianapolis? How are you reacting to this news with the rest of the Indy offense, Jake?
I thought it was interesting that he's kind of just not getting that much attention for it because it is T.Y. Hilton. And T.Y. Hilton at the end of last year, when they started moving him around, using him a little bit differently and saying, you know what, T.Y. Hilton's not what T.Y. Hilton is. Maybe we should use him differently. Hello, Larry Fitzgerald, similar situation. Not the same roles, but the same is like, you're not who you used to be. He bounced back towards the end of last year. People forget that. And people forget that, like, that was even with the kind of broken down passing game that they had. So I thought T.Y. Hilton was intriguing. So I felt this would get a little bit more attention because now it's like, okay, is it Pittman? Is Pittman ready to be the number one? And then we're getting the talks that Zach Pascal is back past Paris Campbell, and Paris Campbell's not looking very good. So now we're talking about the 1-2, and now Campbell would be the 3 inherently, but that's not even a guarantee. There's some talk about Strachan and all the other type of guys, and he's a rookie. I mean, that was a flyer. That all being said, he's not even a guarantee to make the team. I'm just saying that's how far Campbell has fallen. So what it really comes down to me is this is starting to feel like a mess. This is starting to feel like I don't want anybody but Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines. Pittman, sure, but Pittman at cost right after this news broke. I mean, Pittman just skyrocketed, and now he's fringy top 30, 35, and I like Pittman. I just have the feeling of like, can he be the number one guy without, getting some drawn attention away from him? And this tight end situation is like a tight end by committee, which I want nothing to do with. So I do want Pittman. I do tight end by, it is. It's a
I know.
It's a tight end by committee.
I'm not laughing because you're wrong. I'm laughing because it's gross.
It is. It's super gross. I mean, they're even talking about Granson, the rookie, looking good out there. So I want Pittman. I have a feeling it's going to be like one of those situations like similar to Darrell Henderson. There's going to be like, I love Henderson, but now with that injury, he's going to push towards like top 14 running back. And at that point, is the price too much? Pittman right now, love Pittman. But if he starts getting to the top 35, probably going to be out at that cost.
Yeah, me too. I've always been interested in Paris Campbell. I hope he can stay healthy. And, with Hilton God, maybe he can pick up a bigger part of his role as well. So I don't know if you're drafting Campbell yet or if it's just a kind of wait after week 1 and see if you like what you saw. But, Indy's had a rough preseason.
Yes.
I mean, they're getting injured all across that offense, which is fine because they play the Seahawks in week 1. So they can get healthy in week 2.
Selfish. Unbelievably selfish there.
Yeah,
they can play the Seahawks in week 1. Kevin Kernick watching us on YouTube. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us. He's on that Paris Campbell bandwagon. I agree. I think that's more of a wait and see than a draft approach with everything we're hearing coming out of Indy. But it will be interesting to see who scoops up those available looks. And I think I'm a little bit more bullish on Michael Pittman than you two guys. I think he deserves to be in that 35 range. What? I know. It's crazy, right? When you say Wisconsin, you've said it all. I've got it right there. I do think he deserves to be in that 35 range. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to take him when he's on there. I still like Marvin Jones better than him. I like Curtis Samuel better than him. I'm probably taking Tyler Boyd ahead of him. So I think that comes to what you say, Jake. Even though I think he deserves to be in that back-end wide receiver 3 range, if I like those guys better than Michael Pittman, there's probably going to be someone in my league who likes Michael Pittman a little bit better than me. We always see these sorts of situations develop. We're seeing it with Pittman. We're seeing it with Darrell Henderson. We are probably seeing it with Gus Edwards as well. 2 weeks ago, I was at a bachelor party with like 20 friends chilling at a lake house. This past weekend, I spent all day and night with my wife and my 4-month-old daughter in between. I had a full week of work, and in all those situations, Cuts Clothing had the right fits for the job. 5 years ago, Cuts founder Steve Borelli set out to create clothes for every occasion the modern man faces, and since then, Cuts has become the Tesla of t-shirts, hoodies, polos, sweatshirts, and more. From their signature buttery soft Pika Pro Tri-Blend tees to their cozy Hyperloop French Terry fabric hoodies, Cuts elevates clothing staples with cutting-edge fabric technology. This month right here marks the Cuts' 5th anniversary, and they are doing it big with 2 collection drops, a product launch, and a week-long special event. Go to cutsclothing.com/fantasy. You can get 25% off site-wide during the anniversary sale. Again, it's 25% off site-wide at cutsclothing.com/fantasy. Summer is coming to an end here as we are into the final couple of days of August, but it's still hot. It's still hot out there, and that comfort in the hot weather goes beyond t-shirts and shorts. You want to be cool and comfortable when you're sleeping too, don't you? Well, Brooklyn can help you out with that. Their award-winning sheets are your answer for cool, comfortable nights. They've got a ton of options, and guess what? As the cool weather trickles back into our lives, they've got options for that as well with cashmere sheets and flannel sheets and just heavier things that you're going to be looking for as the weather changes, and they can help you out with bathrobes and towels too. So go on, get summer ready, and hey, think about getting fall and winter ready as well with quality comfort at Brooklinen. Go to brooklinen.com and use the promo code ATHLETIC to get $20 off a minimum purchase of $100. That's BROOKLINEN.com with the promo code ATHLETIC for $20 off a minimum purchase of $100. All right, guys, now I do want to talk about some of the preseason week 3 developments. And one thing that caught my eye that I feel like maybe didn't get a ton of attention over the weekend was the performance of Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton looked really good in Denver's final preseason game, played 18 first-team snaps. I think Denver had like 19 first-team snaps, 20 first-team snaps. Sutton played basically all of them, had 3 targets, caught 2 of them for 27 yards and a touchdown. Jake, did you see what you needed to see from Courtland Sutton in this game?
Yeah, I just wanted to see that he looked healthy. And this is one of the ones, unlike Kenny Golladay, mysterious, still not on the field, is that just making sure he was okay, got him out there, got the reps, and got him out of the game. Unfortunately, some like other situations like we kicked off the show with, but we saw a lot in week 3 is they wanted to get some reps with the ones. We hadn't seen Daniel Jones the entire preseason. We saw the Giants get some of their guys out there, and that's why I bring it in, is because you did want to see Golladay, and he looked good. And what on top of it is the fact that Tim Patrick was out there more than Judy was, and I'm not saying that's a super concern, but that was the concern that I went back to from day one with Judy, is that would he be, if there's 3 wide on the field, is he back into the slot, which is good for him, but what happens when there's only 2? Is he going to be splitting with Patrick, or is he going to definitively be the number 2? I want him to be. I believe he can be. He is Jerry Judy, but the clear answer we got is that Sutton is the one. Sutton is back to the one, and let's remember Sutton was being drafted as a fringe wide receiver 1 in fantasy because of his ability.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Not only was he back, I mean, that down and in that he ran was great. I mean, he juked the defender, made a nice sharp cut, and he kind of just one play there, but you saw what you wanted to see. Then he got the touchdown. Yeah, I've always been in on Courtland Sutton over Jerry Judy. We've talked about this, I think, on the last pod though. Is like they're both wide receiver 3s for me though. Sutton's a higher wide receiver 3, but in this offense, we expect to be run heavy defense. Teddy Bridgewater's limitations as just the ceiling of his passing game. They're both wide receiver 3s.
All right.
You're probably not getting either of them if you're valuing them as wide receiver 3s, because there's going to be someone who wants to take, I think, both of those guys. Maybe you're getting Sutton. Yeah, maybe you're getting Sutton actually. As I think through the math of that, yeah, maybe you're getting Sutton, but you're probably not getting Judy. Jake, are you on Sutton over Judy now after what we saw over the weekend?
No, always was. That's
always
was. Always was. Everybody was telling me this entire time, I'm stupid. I'm so low on Judy. Why do you hate Judy? Why do you hate him so much? I have him in the low 30s, and it's really, go back to it. I'll pull up my rankings right now. It's just the names in front of him. I love Judy, but yeah, I just mentioned Kenny Golladay. Like, I have Judy at 37. I just mentioned Kenny, but Kenny Golladay, like, maybe the Giants are finally smart for a change, and he is healthy for week 1. I don't like him with Daniel Jones. I'm still taking Golladay, Odell Beckham, Debo, Courtland Sutton, Marvin Jones, Shenault, Robbie Anderson, Claypool. Like, where do you put Judy in front of those guys? And I love Judy. It's just that. But this, again, I think this is full circle, to use that. There you go, Brandon. For 3 months ago, we were talking how deep wide receiver is. I want Judy to be higher, but it's like this just tells you how deep wide. And that's in front of Tyler Boyd and Will Fuller and Curtis Samuel, who you can make the argument for that could finish in front of them.
Yeah,
that's why we did that wide receiver 3 draft way back when, because this is just an incredibly deep group of guys who no one's taking as top 20 receivers, but everybody seemingly wants on their team.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say earlier when we were talking about Pittman, you were saying he's pushing back end wide receiver 3. I think there's about 20 to 25 receivers that are pushing back end wide receiver 3. It makes it really hard to rank these guys.
It really does. And one of the guys Jake mentioned was Laviska Shenault, and we can jump down to him because more Viska hype, certainly. Marvin Jones didn't play. DJ Shark didn't play in this game, but Viska took advantage of the opportunities he was given. Trevor Lawrence looked excellent in this game. Viska got 3 targets, caught all 3 of them, 33 yards, and a touchdown. And I think something you can take with some confidence with as it relates to Laviska Shenault is seeing a ton of 11 personnel from the Jaguars this season, a ton of 3 wide sets, 1 tight end, 1 running back. And even if he is only in there in 3 wide, this team's going to run a ton of 3 wide. Is it enough, Brandon, for you to get on board with Laviska at his increasing draft cost?
Yeah, well, it's something about it that I've noticed this preseason. It sure seems like they're manufacturing touches for Laviska, and kind of like how when you watch Arizona, you see the same thing with Rondale Moore. I think he's been out there because they have designed plans for how they want to use him. It makes me feel better about him on a week in and week out basis. And I think that they very specifically have an idea of how they want to use him, and so for that, I'm kind of heartened. I haven't. I still have Marvin Jones ranked as the top Jags receiver, but I got Viska kind of just pushing right at the edge of that top 40 to get in there, and I want to do it again. It just comes down to so many guys that you have to move a guy up, and it's like, oh, it's hard.
It is, but that's really what it comes down to is just the usage that they're finding ways. It's still concerning whether or not the 3 wide is going to be an option for them. But we already talked about it too, is that just might be offset by the rushing upside with no Travis Etienne now. There's just but there's a lot of uncertainty in general. I mean, we already hear like the Urban Meyer thing has been a mess this entire preseason. Like he almost seems like he doesn't know what he wants to do game to game. And now the front office is already sounding frustrated with him, and which is just, we talked about this months ago. It's like, what if this is a Chip Kelly situation? Chip Kelly, all of this great college mind comes to the NFL and just bombs because you can't do that in the NFL. So, again, I'm not saying it's going to be a complete mess. Trevor Lawrence looked great, and everybody's like, oh, God, look at these throws he's made. Oh, he's Trevor freaking Lawrence, people. But it comes down to it's just consistency of use is the only question. You said it, Mike, I do have them back-to-back. They're both inside the top 40. If Shark ends up being the best, I think that's kind of the long shot at this point because he hasn't been on the field, but it still wouldn't shock me.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brandon.
Well, I was just going to say, I looked it up the other day. There's been like 15 to 20 guys that went straight from college to the NFL since 2000, and all of them except for 2 have went out with losing records. And Bill O'Brien was 2 games over 500. He was one of the successful ones, and the only other one that was successful was Jim Harbaugh coming in from Stanford. So, there's just a long track record.
Wait. Over how long of a period of time was that?
Since 2000. So
just for their entire coaching careers?
Yeah, for their entire coaching careers, only 2 of them have had winning records, and Bill O'Brien's was a big barrier.
So we're not. Pete Carroll's previous NFL experience makes him ineligible for this discussion.
Yes.
His pre-USC NFL experience.
Yep, exactly.
I got you. So Urban Meyer, we're looking at another Jonathan Bender and not a Kevin Garnett.
That's right. Or Nick Saban.
Just in general, you seem pretty upset by this.
One more thing in Jacksonville that we had. So you mentioned Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, who's surprised, right? Trevor Lawrence, all he's been is the best college quarterback for the last 3 years running. So no surprise that he looked great. 17 snaps that he played. James Robinson played 10 of those. Carlos Hyde played 7. We've talked about this a little bit. Now we saw it in practice. Jake, are you scared at all about what Carlos Hyde could do as it relates to eating into James Robinson's workload?
No, I'm scared of what Urban Meyer might do. That's really what it comes down to. We mentioned this when the injury happened. He's the one that drafted Etienne in the first round despite having James Robinson. They haven't made the move for everybody's favorite player that it doesn't have a team and apparently could play for all 32 teams despite nobody signing him, Duke Johnson. Everybody wants to put Duke Johnson on every single team in the NFL. I don't know if you saw Brian Hill is now on the injury reserve, going to miss the season. Duke Johnson, put him on Tennessee. But it really comes down to is I say that jokingly for the fact that I wouldn't be shocked if he still brings in somebody because he doesn't, I'm talking about Urban Meyer, doesn't seem 100% sold on James Robinson, despite if you've watched the preseason, as messy as this offense has been, and you watch the backfield, even when Etienne was out there, you would say if you just took the names off the jersey, said, let me watch football with a smart eye, James Robinson passes the eye test, to use that cliche, he's the best looking running back. Has it been also messy in general because of the offense? Sure. But James Robinson, but that's also why, to go back to the conversation we had last week, that's why I have him at 58% versus the 70% he was getting last year. So I'm not, because that still keeps James Robinson inside the top 20 running backs.
Brandon, anything to add?
Nothing to add to that. No.
You just checked out.
Sorry, I'm looking up. I'm preparing.
Looking up coaches.
I'm ahead in the script. I'm just preparing my my comments for what's coming.
All right. Well, I want to talk about some of these running backs that we have talked about. I want to say we talked about all of these guys last week after their preseason games, but we got another data point, and I just wanted to reinforce some of those discussions that we had a week ago. So let's start with Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert took all the first-team snaps for San Francisco. Both you guys, I guess we're all Trey Sermon fans. I mean, we all like Trey Sermon to varying degrees. None of us is fading Trey Sermon, that's for sure. I am just very, very strongly on Team Mostert after what we've seen from him for the last 2 seasons, and it just seems to be that no matter what, we're going to see him as the number 1 back in San Francisco so long as he's healthy. And what really drives it home for me is that we're not talking about him suddenly sharing a backfield that he didn't share previously. He's always shared this backfield since he's been an important part of San Francisco's offense, and he's always found a way to huge per game and per touch numbers. So I don't really see Trey Sermon as someone who detracts significantly from Raheem Mostert from where he's been previously. I think Mostert can just keep doing what he's doing. Health is the concern, not Sermon, and I like Sermon as well. Brandon, where do you go on Mostert as we now have wrapped up the preseason?
Yeah, this is part of my research. Just looking at the last 3 years, the number one, the highest carry total by a San Francisco 49er running back was Matt Breida in 2018 over the last 3 years, and that was 153 carries. And you look at the year after that was Tevin Coleman and Raheem Mostert, 137 each, and like Jeff Wilson or the third guy had like 100, or Breida had 120, and then last year Jeff Wilson and like it's fine. You can call Raheem Mostert the number one running back, but he's just not going to be that far ahead of Trey Sermon, and I don't think you can really rank these guys that far apart from each other. They're going to have a very close split. This has always just been the way Kyle Shanahan's operated this backfield.
Yeah, pretty much. And what it comes down to as well, though, is unlike the Denver situation where it's like, hey, he's going to definitively take over. This is one where it's like, you know what? If Mostert stays healthy, it's not the best case scenario, but it's not the end of the world. Raheem Mostert splitting the backfield with Sermon and other options can still be a consistent and great RB2, and you can probably get flex value out of Sermon. And then if anything were to happen to one or the other, we always talk, and I'm not saying you, Mike, we just in general in the fantasy community always say what happens to Mostert, Sermon's going to turn into a potential RB1. What if something happens to Sermon? Like, nobody's talking about that. Like, he's a rookie, so we're kind of just throwing that out and no injury history, but it's like, what if Sermon goes down and all of a sudden Mostert jumps back to what he was at the end of last year in those few games where he was an RB1 because of the volume. So there is upside for Mostert besides where he's going as well. I wouldn't do what our colleague in the industry has done, but Steve Gardner in the Flex League at the turn in the 7th, 8th round, because I guess the expense wasn't that great in his opinion, but he took Mostert and Sermon. Now, I don't think he's planning to play both of them, but it's not the worst where, you potentially get an RB1 if something happens to either one.
Yeah. Purdue needs a win over Ohio State, and it's not happening at the college level. So I think it can happen here in San Francisco with Mostert getting a little bit ahead of Trey Sermon. You mentioned Denver. Let's go to that one, Jake. Javonte Williams didn't play. Melvin Gordon did play. Melvin Gordon looked pretty good. You guys in that game, 5 carries for 35 yards, got 1 target, caught it for 4 yards. But still, again, I just wanted to check in on this. This can be quick. Status quo in Denver, everything we've been talking about. Javonte takes over eventually, and eventually maybe has already happened with the fact that he sat and Gordon didn't.
There you go. All right, I have him at RB26. I have Melvin Gordon at 35, and that's only because I think they split more to start the year than they do when it's finally mostly Williams. I think this is more telling in the fact of let's make sure Melvin Gordon looks usable, and the fact that they sat Williams knowing they've seen enough, which, by the way, Michael Carter's still getting run in all 3 games. And granted, we could talk about Michael Carter falling to
We're coming on that next.
Yeah, so the difference is Williams sat. They've seen enough. Williams is the guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to talk Michael Carter?
Let's talk Michael Carter because he played again in week 3. Tevin Coleman did not play for the Jets. And once again, not only did he play, but he's running behind Ty Johnson in that game. I mean, guys, we just have to own up to what the Jets are doing, right? Like Michael Carter, if and when the takeover happens, it's not going to be for a while. Where are you at on it? I mean, Brandon, you do have multiple drafts this week. How are you going to be treating Michael Carter in those drafts, as bullish as you are on the player himself when you consider the situation?
Yeah, I've had to, consider the situation. I've had Michael Carter all the way up to like RB21 at one point in the summer. He's down to RB29 now, but I'm still for the long run going to bet on the talent. But I think what we should know about this thing is it's going to be a relative of the San Francisco 49ers backfield, where they're simply not just probably going to have one guy that's going to win this job and run away with the volume. I think no matter what, you're going to see all 3 of these guys. But in the end, I still bet that Michael Carter, because of his upside in the passing game, because I think he's the most talented guy in all aspects of the backfield role, is still the best player, and I will still bet on that for the long run. But I have dropped him down to just barely inside my top 30.
Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to is this is the situation that we talked about a month or two ago, is that we both, all of us, expected Michael Carter but when I say both the players, Michael Carter and Javonte Williams to both take over by week 6 or 7. it's looking like Williams is already taking over. Not a 70-80% workload, but he is the lead guy, whereas it's not Michael Carter yet. It's still probably going to happen. We are talking Tevin Coleman and Ty Johnson, and we're talking talent wins out at running back more often than anything else, even if you are a rookie, because talent at running back is more there's a bigger disparity, even though there's less of an impact, if that makes sense. So you want to go with that upside, and Michael Carter is the best talent. It just might not be the beginning. And what do we just go from transitioning, talking about San Francisco? Where did this solid guy come from? Oh, yeah, that's right. These type of backfields and these type of situations where even at best case scenario, if it was Carter, it still might only be 50% of the workload. So Carter, I like it now because he's a better value than he was. He was creeping up into the 5th round, and now you can still get the discount that we wanted and we were getting 3 and 4 weeks ago.
All right, one more backfield situation I want to touch on. Again, this one can be very quick, but I think we should just mention it. Damien Harris played all the first and second down snaps with the first team in their first game since the Sony Michel trade. James White played all the third down snaps. I mean, is this exactly what we're expecting it to be, as clean as we saw it in this game, Jake?
Yep. They made the trade. This is exactly what we were having. This is why. I will. Anybody who call me stupid for Damien Harris, yeah, where are you now? That's all I'm saying. Where are you
So
now?
wait, let me also ask you this, and Brandon, you answer this one too. So where is Harris now in your rankings? Now that Michel's gone, we've seen it. We know first and second down owned by Harris, third down probably owned by James White. Where does he end up in your rankings?
Jake?
Oh, I thought you said Brandon. Sorry.
Oh, he asked you. I didn't say I could follow up. I have him at 23 right
there you go. I knew you said Brandon there somewhere there. Damien
23.
Harris from. Yep, he's 23. Are you talking about you or me? Because I was just 23 for me.
now. He's 23 for me.
There you go.
23 in there. Look at that.
There's
23.
There's no bet to make.
little agreement. Yeah, too bad. No side bet to make. We've sort of fallen behind in these last few episodes. We'll get some on Thursday. I'm already ginning up an idea in my head that's going to force us into side bets. Because, ginning up ideas. Ginning them up.
I've never heard that before.
Like an engine. I think that's what it comes from. I've always assumed that's what it comes from. Like how the cotton gin, gin is short for engine. I've always assumed that's what the ginning things up phrase comes from.
Yeah, that's new to me. I'm not saying
etymology is very fun. You should look into it.
I've heard the term. I've never really thought about where it comes from, but that makes some sense. I like it.
That's what I'm doing for you guys. I'm always thinking about where phrases come from, where words come from. Then we can drop them in and learn a little something that has nothing to do with football alongside all the football that we're getting. I also want to empty the tight end notebook because we've neglected to address the position in a big way, but there have been some things that happened. We had the Adam Troutman injury a couple of weeks ago. This week we have Irv Smith and Evan Ingram both suffering injuries. Irv Smith's going to miss some time early in the season. We already know that after undergoing surgery on his knee. Evan Ingram has a calf injury, so we're keeping a big eye on that. With all the things that have happened with these back-end guys, Troutman, who we were excited about earlier, Irv, Ingram, with those injuries happening, are you approaching this position any differently, Jake, than you were, say, maybe a month or so ago?
I'm saying stop stealing my notes from my All in Football show. It's so funny you came up with the same thing, because today I told Meany, I said, sorry, Chris, and I know people are like, oh, because that was his face, but I was like, let's talk tight ends after the top 6, 7, 8 tight ends, because
what are you doing?
The truth is like a third of the league, maybe a fourth at best, but there's going to be teams that has to jump into this pool and don't want to swim these waters, to continue with this paraphrasing here. So, it really comes down to, I like Jonnu, but after you get past Jonnu, then you get what you're talking about here is we're talking about Cole Kmets and Uzmas and Jarwins and Conklins now that Irv Smith got hurt, which you're welcome. That was the only tight end I took in my home league, so I just ruined that for everybody.
Nice.
You're right in the fact that we do have to talk more about this situation, because Troutman 50% of the time at least is blocking, so he's off the board. Irv Smith is hurt. I think Conklin's intriguing while Irv Smith is out. You guys know that I brought that up before, saying that Conklin was more consistent on the targets at the end of the season when Kyle Rudolph was done. Irv Smith had the bigger games, but he was offset with 2 good games and 2 really stinkers. I think Conklin's intriguing as long as Irv Smith is out. Evan Ingram being hurt. The Gronk situation. This guy went...
Yes. Are we sleeping on him? Are we sleeping on Gronk right now?
I brought this up on the show. In his 11 games, once he woke up, I've mentioned this before, not to name drop Brian McFadden because he's a former player who told me this, so I'm giving all the credit to him. He said Gronk was going to take some time, and he brought it into his comparison was Antonio Brown. He legitimately said this on my podcast. Don't expect anything from Antonio Brown till December. He called that to a T. This is why he's a former player and now an analyst. Is Gronk last year, once he did, it was 7 touchdowns in 11 games. Like, he was a tight end top 5 once he woke up. Again, I'm not saying I would take him there, but I think Gronk is the easy answer staring us. I'll say it correctly this time, Mike. It's the smooth brain thinking that Emery always puts out. Like, the answer's there. Don't overthink it.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I don't know that I've changed a whole lot on the tight end position. If you're not in on those first 6 guys or so, there was a ton of guys that you were considering to take at the back end. And, like, I'm still getting a lot of Gerald Everett, you know, and there's, like, guys like Cole Kmet, Anthony Ferkser's kind of in my kind of maybe list now. But, like, it's not that hard, especially in a 12-team league, to throw out a guy as the last tight end starter taken in the league that you feel like has some upside. It's not pretty, but it never is at the back end of the tight end position. This is nothing new. I mean, I feel like the upper tier class has gotten bigger because it's not just those 3 guys. There's like a second tier of 3 now as well. So at least half of a 12-team league is pretty solid, and that doesn't even include Logan Thomas. So
that's what I was going to say, and we got to be quick on this. So give me like 30 seconds each. If you don't get to the top 6, and the top 6 are Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, Pitts, Andrews, Hawkinson. I don't know if anyone has any of those guys not in the top 6. If you don't get one of them, are you going for Logan Thomas or Robert Tonyan or Noah Fant, or are you just waiting and saying, I'll throw a dart at Cole Kmet, I'll throw a dart at Tyler Higbee, or maybe you even have Tyler Higbee in that next group? But how are you treating that how are you treating that group of tight ends, Brandon?
Yeah, I think it just has to do with where
go big or go home.
Well, it's just context too. I mean, I'd take Logan Thomas at the right spot if he's still sitting there. I mean, yeah, it's just about who else is available at other positions, what my needs are. But I would like to have Logan Thomas. I think he's kind of positioned himself as, in my mind, the number 7 guy. You know, he's almost a tier of himself. And then after that, it's a whole bunch of guys. So, yeah, I wouldn't mind Logan Thomas, but it has to be the right spot.
I'll listen to Mike and answer quick. Number 7 is Higbee for me. I'll go Higbee. If not Higbee, Jono. If not Jono, then I'm just waiting in darts, and that's like the Jarwins of the world.
I do like Higbee, yeah. I would almost put him there with Thomas as well.
Tight end, an interesting spot if you don't end up spending up, as it so often is. It pretty much is every single season. We've got a new partner here today, and that's Fight Camp. Fight Camp brings the boxing and kickboxing gym right to your home with full body workouts that you'll actually look forward to doing, and a freestanding punching bag that can take your hardest hits. Fight Camp is made for beginners to experienced boxers who want to box from home, with several different paths you can follow that teach you the skills along the way, paired with workouts to reinforce your new learnings. Comes with all the gear you need to box at home, including a freestanding punching bag, gloves, quick hand wraps, and a unique punch tracking sensor that challenges you to hit minimum amount of punches each round and allow you to track your boxing and kickboxing journey so you can see all the progress that you're making. It's great for kids. It's just a great workout. It's something that can be really, really fun and really, really engaging. You can learn from 6 highly qualified trainers with real fight experience, ranging from pro MMA fighters and a mother of 2 to a kickboxing champion. Fight Camp uses new tech that tracks each punch you throw to measure speed, volume, and output so you can follow your progress, push yourself, and compete with the community on the leaderboard. You can pay for your Fight Camp over 24 months for less than the cost of a boxing gym, and you can get it right now. Plus, Fight Camp offers free shipping with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Just go to joinfightcamp.com/athletic. Again, it'll get you free shipping on Fight Camp if you just go to joinfightcamp.com/athletic. All right, guys, we are just about wrapping up the show here, so I'm just going to ask you for a parting thought. We are, again, at the start of the final week of draft season. So this could be go get player X, you have to have him. This could be some sort of strategy tip, but a parting thought as people are wrapping up draft season and engaging in their final drafts and auctions. Jake, what do you got?
Go get your running backs. We already talked about it. But, I mean, even after, if you don't do the first 2 rounds, go get your running backs late, too, and get plenty of these backup options out there like the Williamses, multiple Williamses. These situations could change on a dime, and we know that. It was an injury in week 1. It's no different than what we just saw what happened to J.K. Dobbins and Cam Akers in the preseason. Like, these things happen week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's why some people argue 0 running back. But these kind of options are out there. Don't be the league that leaves the Tony Jones if Latavius Murray gets cut. Don't leave Tony Jones lingering out there. Don't leave all these other options hanging out on the waiver wires. Is make sure you just stock that bench. Your bench should be upside. Never, I can use him during my bye week. Those guys are pointless.
I will throw out the thing that drives me crazy the most questions I get are of this ilk. Hey, I have the 8th pick in a draft. I'm thinking of going running back, wide receiver, running back, quarterback. I cannot stress the importance of being strategy agnostic when it comes to your draft. Go in with your list of your rankings and draft off your sheet for the best available, at least for the first 6-7 rounds. Then you can start going strategy with positions and what's available, but get the best players and don't be preset on a notion that I need to have. Jake will say I need to get 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds, but you're not married to that if the draft.
I want to, don't need to. There's a
difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm Brandon. I'm not even joking. That's exactly what I was going to say. Get best players early, worry about positions later. Right there with you on that. So I'll throw out a more team specific or player specific. Geez, man. The stuttering's been ridiculous. The team-specific or player-specific parting thought from me, I want investment in Cincinnati's passing game. I want investment in Tampa's passing game. I want investment in Dallas's passing game. I am borderline totally agnostic on the players I get, but I want investment in those passing games because they are going to be very lucrative this season. So I have all those guys, all those receivers on those teams, and the quarterbacks on those teams in my mind as I kick off my draft. We have just kicked off the final week of draft season here on the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. Right now, you can go to theathletic.com/fantasyfootballpod to get 50% off an annual subscription. This is one of the biggest deals we do all year, so take advantage of it now while you can. We've got 3 more episodes coming to you this final week of draft season. That includes me, Jake, and Brandon back with you on Thursday. Until then, have a great couple of days. We'll talk to you soon, and happy drafting.